Hi, and welcome to Terribly Fun Films. We are continuing with Dragon Con Countdown, and we have a doozy of a title for you today. If I said the whole title every time I had to mention it throughout this entire review, we would go over my self-appointed time limits, which aren't actually a thing. My videos range from 10 minutes to an hour, so you know, not actually a thing. But it's such a long, cumbersome title. I'm only going to say it a few times, and then I'm going to shorten it anytime I need to reference it as a whole work. Probably just a Hercules and Xena, because the whole title of this direct-to-DVD animated movie is this: Hercules and Xena dash the animated movie colon the Battle for Mount Olympus. If that isn't enough words for you, I'm going to repeat it one more time, and that way you'll know the entire title, and then we're going to move on and shorten it and get on with the review. Hercules and Xena dash the animated movie colon the Battle for Mount Olympus. It is a cumbersome, awkward, ridiculous title. You might be wondering to yourself, on the poster that you see, it looks an awful lot like the Kevin Sorbo Hercules. And it is. This ties directly into the 1995 starting show starring Kevin Sorbo as Hercules, and of course its spin-off starring Lucy Lawless, Xena, thus Hercules and Xena. It is obviously, as you can tell from the title on the poster, an animated movie, and it's a musical, and it's trying way too hard and not hard enough at the exact same time. Hercules and Xena, the animated movie, The Battle for Mount Olympus, is a mouthful to say. Let's move on with the review. Hercules and Xena sees Hercules being pitted against the gods of Mount Olympus by Hera, because, you know, that's what she does. Hercules is convinced to return home to see his mom. When he gets there, he sees his mom being taken away by Zeus. This angers him as he believes Zeus is kidnapping his mom. Meanwhile, Ares, ever in love with Xena, is trying to convince Xena to help him and Hercules, since Hera's ultimate goal is to release the Titans and have them run amok so that people lose faith in the gods and they control all of them. They do this using the MacGuffin of the piece, some sort of crystal, the Power Stone, I don't know what they called it, but that's how they do it. That's the movie. It starts off with a song called Across the Sea of Time. It is being sung by merpeople for no apparent reason whatsoever. And the first thing you'll notice, the first thing that jumps out at you in terms of the animation, is that it's really, really stiff movement. There's only a little bit of movement per frame. It's not very kinetic, but it's also highly stylized in terms of each character design and that sort of thing. I believe they're trying to go back to the sort of stylistic things you would see on ancient Greece vases and tapestries and things like that. And for the backgrounds, they don't really paint them in. It's watercolor backgrounds that are just big colors. Everything has a dominant color, maybe two or three colors depending on the particular scene, but mostly one dominant color and maybe a few others in there that aren't the actual characters. So there are no real backgrounds to speak of, and this makes the movie very odd to watch. It's odd because the character designs are mostly okay. I'll get more into that in a moment. And I like the stylized approach, and I like the idea of those backgrounds, but it doesn't work here. There's nothing in terms of how the movie is presented, in terms of cinematography, editing, and style of directing that made that necessary. So on the show Hercules: The Legendary Journeys and on Xena, Warrior Princess, both of which I'm a fairly big fan of, takes place in, forests, mountains, lakes, oceans, things like that. Filmmakers had an opportunity to get real crazy with it and really hit home the fantastical things that they just didn't have the budget, time, or means to do on a weekly fantasy show like that. So if Hercules is entering a forest, instead of having it look like a forest, have the trees be all weird and mangled and much bigger than they are on the show. Exaggerate everything, and they don't do that, which is a missed opportunity, but that's more of a I wish they did than necessarily anything against the movie, because if you take any still frame from the film, with maybe a few exceptions, it looks alright. Again, the backgrounds work in terms of what we're looking at, and in terms of having the character animation and whatever props they are using on top of it. It looks totally fine. It's just, as an animated movie, they're stiff. There's not that much kinetic motion in terms of the characters moving across the screen. So it's iffy in that regard, if that makes sense. The movie was directed by Lynn Naylor, who has a massive amount of credits as an actress, as a director, as an animation producer, that sort of thing, as a screenwriter. Mostly, though, it's been TV, and I can kind of see why. This ties directly into the lack of vision and the lack of actually making things real intriguing in terms of being a visual animated representation of what we already know based on the shows. The direction here is lifeless. They just put up their camera side, they do animated planes, or animated plane on top with moving characters, and that's it. There's very few stylized shots. There are very few really crazy, kinetic, edited moments that you will recall or remember that'll make you want to rewatch the movie. The most memorable from a visual standpoint is the opening credits. The song Across the Sea of Time is just sort of giving you an entire truncated history of Greek mythology to understand who Zeus and the rest of the gods and Hercules and his friends are. So it kind of works in that regard. But it really is the only song there, and I'll get more into the songs in a little bit. While her directing doesn't necessarily downplay any aspects of the film, it definitely doesn't actually bring any element up either. John Loy wrote the screenplay, and he has written multiple Land Before Time movies. He has written for several direct-to-DVD family/kid-oriented films like Dinosaur Island, and he has a very long career in writing children's television programs, and things mostly work out on that front for him here. He is somewhat beholden to what has come beforehand in terms of having to be accurate to the characterizations as presented already within the two shows this film is combining. But I would say, excluding the songs, the strongest technical aspect is the screenplay. The story is fairly interesting. The MacGuffin isn't a huge plot point and not everything centers around it, so the movie doesn't feel hollow in that regard. There are some nice character moments. There's some ridiculous one-liners that work in context of aiming this more at children than the TV shows were, which I would say are family-friendly, but kind of an older family. I wouldn't let a 5-year-old watch it, but a 5-year-old could watch this movie, you know what I mean? And there's a solid reason for Ares helping Xena, there's a solid reason for Xena helping Hercules, and then solid reasons for the third act in which certain things happen, people get mad at other people, and I'm not going to ruin everything for you. But the screenplay overall works. It's not necessarily very deep. We don't engage with the characters' mindsets all that often. But in terms of being an 80-minute filler piece that presents Hercules and Xena teaming up for something, it services those. It does right in terms of the original characterizations that we already know, the original characterizations that we already know from the other supporting characters, like Gabriella's on the show, you know, things like that. So it at least gets all that right, which is a strong point in the movie's favor. Of course, what sort of proper Hercules Xena team-up movie would it be if we didn't get the actual cast of the show back? And we did. Hercules is voiced by Kevin Sorbo, and there are moments he sounds a little bit bored, but there are other moments, especially when he's just getting to riff and one line and joke about with his traveling companion on the show, Iolus, that he's having fun, and it's very obvious he enjoys the character of Hercules. Speaking of Iolus, he is, of course, voiced by Michael Hurst, the actor from the TV show, and he does a pretty good job, hamming it up a little too much, in my opinion, in terms of what we're used to from the show. But in context, it kind of works, because again, this is more kid-oriented, that sort of thing. Lucy Lawless is playing Xena, and she, without doubt, gives the best voice acting performance in the film. There's a reason that Xena became such a mega pop star thing. Don't get me wrong, Hercules did it very, very well on its own, but in terms of iconography, the world knows Xena made the longer lasting impression that's still going on to this day. Hercules is fondly remembered for being a little bit goofy, a lot of fun, and getting Xena to be spun off from it. It's kind of the difference between Buffy the Vampire Slayer movie versus TV show. She's really good. There's a lot of moments where she gets to be angry, or empathetic, or sympathetic, or confused. And she plays all those really well. She gives everything a much greater sense of purpose and greater meaning than the lines have outside, within context of the very simple story being told. Of course, Gabrielle is back, and that is Renee O'Connor's character, and she does a fine job. She's alright. She gets turned into a giant eagle at one point, so she doesn't have too many lines in the later half of the movie. But before then, she's as energetic and as fun and crazy as you recall her from being in the show. Ares is voiced by the same actor who does him on the TV show, and that is Kevin Smith. The reason I preface that very specifically with the same actor from the show is we don't confuse our two Kevin Smiths. We have Kevin Smith, the writer, director, producer, actor of the View Askew movie universe, Jay and Silent Bob, Clerks, Chasing Amy, all that jazz. Not this person. Not this person at all. This Kevin Smith played Ares and other recurring roles on Hercules and Xena throughout his career. He was in a made-for-Sci-Fi Channel movie, their first version of Riverworld. He sadly died in 2002. And he, just like on the show, makes Ares a really complicated, interesting character. Again, brings a lot of depth to the lines, to the line readings, to the small character interactions with Xena. That's not necessarily found in the screenplay, and definitely gives it more life than the directing does. Hercules' half-sister Aphrodite is voiced by Alexander Tidings, and they turned her into a sort of surfer dude. Straight up Valley Girl surfer person, and it's hilarious. It's hilarious. It's ridiculous. With that in mind, I think she gives my second favorite performance, because she's able to carry off this really odd characterization fairly well and easily have the funniest moments in the film. Everybody else that I haven't necessarily mentioned, Peter Rowley, who does Zeus, Joy Watson as Hera. Everyone's fine. There's no bad voice acting in terms of that sort of thing. Some are just better than others, but everybody at least does a passable job. So, it is a musical, but once you get past the opening title sequence, which begins Across the Sea of Time, you have to wait roughly an hour for the next song. I honestly thought, when I was rewatching the movie for this review, because I've only seen it once before this, that I had just misremembered, and that the only song is the one in the beginning, and I took that to mean it's a musical. No, it is a musical, it's just so shoddily constructed in terms of that sort of thing, that you wait an hour, you get 2 songs, and then there are no more songs in the film. There are only 3 songs altogether. And they come very beginning, a long stretch of no songs, 2 immediately following each other, and then nothing else. It's really awkward, it's really weird. I question why turning this into a musical at all. You can still leave your opening number just as is, and nobody would question why there are no more songs in the film, because the opening number doesn't involve the main characters directly, and it's just setting up the world that the movie inhabits. Across the Sea of Time is probably the best song in the movie, even though it has like 5 different melodies going on. It is the most plot-moving and character-centric in terms of that sort of thing. The Titans have a song. I'm going to call it the Boom Shakalaka song, because they do in fact sing Boom Shakalaka in it, if that tells you anything about the goofy level we're at with the songs. It's silly, it's goofy, maybe kids will be entertained by it. In the proper context, I was entertained by it because it's so bad. And then Lucy Lawless gets a song. Based on what I'm saying here, in terms of Wikipedia and IMDb, it looks like she did her own singing. If I'm wrong there, I'm sorry to whoever actually did the singing. And her singing's just fine. The song is only okay. It's better than the Titans song, but it's comes at an odd moment in terms of pacing of the film. The Titans one kind of works, and I think maybe if we had a little bit more time without a song and then we went into that song, things would play out better. But just going directly into that one kind of brings down the energy of the Titans song to this like sort of mournful, sad piece about how Xena's missing Gabrielle. That just kind of interrupts the flow of things going on. Luckily, at only 80 minutes long, the movie does move very quickly. So, I mentioned the character designs before. The character designs for the creatures, the Titans, the merpeople singing in the beginning, any non-human character, totally fine. The character designs for all the gods, mostly alright. The character designs on Xena and Gabrielle, just fine. The character design of Kevin Sorbo's Hercules, though, is very odd. Very weird. It looks just enough like him that you can tell, but it also kind of makes him look like a caveman in ways that the real-life Kevin Sorbo does not look like a caveman. It's really bizarre. And then they give him some weird facial animations at moments when he's like lifting really heavy things. So the moment where he's keeping open a chasm that ripped open because Iolaus is trying to save somebody who fell in. And he's contorting his face in a way that just looks unnaturally odd. So, the animation is kind of lifeless. The direction doesn't add inner energy. The voice acting's really trying. The background animation is lacking because you could have done something way more interesting with it. But, and this is where things get interesting, I do recommend it because you'll be entertained as hell. The movie is not that clever, not that smart. It's really goofy. It has some moments that will make you roll your eyes. It might have a few moments to legitimately laugh at, and is clearly aimed at children that are younger than the actual show's demographic. But, if you stick with it, you'll be entertained. Seeing animated Kevin Sorbo, seeing animated Lucy Lawless is kind of amusing. And just watching them try so hard to get this across is very amusing and very silly. So it is a great, terribly fun film. As always, I've been your host, Bobby. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time with more Dragon Con Countdown.